Hey everybody, it's me, Kyle, and there is no way I'm going to be able to get through this video without pissing off somebody, so I'm just going to do it anyway. Pardon? Oh god, that's about to prove my point. I apologize, pardon me everyone, for my ragamuffin-y appearance. I am exhausted because it is 10 a.m. I have not slept in over 24 hours. Because I really wanted to finish this fucking game ASAP so I could talk about it. So yeah, 20 minutes ago I rolled credits on The Last of Us Part 2. A divisive game, to say the least. So yeah, it is Saturday morning, 10:21 a.m. And as of right now, on Metacritic, the game is sitting at a 95 critic score and a 3.3 user score. That has got to be one of the largest disconnects I think that has ever happened. And that just goes to show a lot of the split that has happened around this game. To be fair, I knew that going in. I knew that from the word go. Ever since the leaks happened, you know, people made their opinions about the game. It's part of the reason why I did the 2 fucking reviews thing that I did. But this has just become a goddamn mess, and I'm not even gonna touch it. Really, like, I'm not gonna touch the war raging on the internet right now about this game, even though I'm about to throw myself right into the middle of it. So maybe I should, but I'm not gonna. So yeah, so this video right here is just going to be my first impressions right after beating the game of what I think about The Last of Us Part 2. This is not my full review, and this is not going to be spoilered. Like, this is spoiler free. I'm just going to talk about things in a general sense, and then in my actual review, which is going to be like a deep dive into the game and everything about it, I am going to spoil the shit out of it there. So if you're worried about spoilers, don't worry. I'm going to be vague about things that I want to talk about. But yeah, let's jump into this. First up, just to avoid controversy for as long as humanly possible, I'm going to talk about the things I think are non-controversial about this game. The things that I think if you're a rational human being, you can just recognize as factually true, unless you got some great argument that'll prove me wrong. But, I mean, I think these are things that even people who hate this game will generally accept. This game is beautiful. Graphically gorgeous. Animations are amazing. Like, looking at this game in action, it is a work of art. It's probably the best looking game I've ever seen on the PlayStation 4. And it's really clear that the artists and programmers and stuff at Naughty Dog like pushed that console to its limits. I played on a base PS4. I can't even imagine how good this game looks on a Pro. So yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to be crazy to look at this game and go like, nah, ugly. So yeah, graphics. 2 thumbs up. Sound. Across the board, again, great job. The music is amazing. We knew that going in, that it would be. The music in the first Last of Us is iconic. One of, in my opinion, the best scores to any video game. This just continues that streak. It's great. The sound design of the game itself is also phenomenal. Immerses you in the game like nobody's business. I had my headphones on for the whole thing. That surround sound, hearing clickers behind me, like, oh, fuck, man, it's good. It is good. I have no complaints with the sound. And, voice acting. Just the performances in the game overall are great. For those of you who have issues with the story and the characterization, I am not talking about that yet. I am just merely talking about the actual performances given by the actors with what they had. Laura Bailey, Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, all the supporting players. I think everybody gave like great performances for their characters. And I mean, like, it was impressive. Like, basically this game on a technical level is damn good. And really goes to show, like, that Naughty Dog has a way of just, like, pushing the envelope of what, like, a PlayStation console can do. I mean, it kind of reminds me at the same time that, like, you know, when you played the first Last of Us on PS3, like, that game didn't look like it was on the same console generation as a lot of games were. Now, obviously, it didn't look like it was a PS4 game. Uh, and even, obviously, the remaster of it didn't quite look like it was a PS4 game, but, like, they were able to, like, tweak and milk out every ounce of power that PlayStation has, and it shows here, too. The game looks amazing. It's a great little swan song for what they could do on the PlayStation 4. I think those are the non-controversial things I can say. Everything else is a fucking clusterfuck anymore. But here, let's just dive in. I think we're just going to go in order of, like, slightly less controversial to most controversial claims. So the gameplay. I've said before, I don't know if I've said it recently, and I don't know if people weren't paying attention to my negative fake review of The Last of Us Part 2. The original Last of Us is probably my favorite video game of all time. So I'm going into this game with very high expectations. One of the departments where I do not have high expectations was the gameplay. Because as much as I love The Last of Us, I do not love it for its gameplay. I tolerate its gameplay. Because its gameplay is totally fine. In my opinion, it gets in the way from time to time, but most of the time it's there to get you from A to B, and you shoot some bad guys and whatever. It's not bad. I've played bad video games that played poorly. That is not one of them, but it is not exciting. And it is why no one plays The Last of Us. For, like, I don't give a shit about the story. I just want to craft shivs and stab clickers. Like, that's not how it goes. But I think that the gameplay in The Last of Us Part 2 is a definite improvement over the first game. I don't think that's hard. But I think it is an improvement. It kind of tweaks and fine-tunes some stuff. It gives you a little bit more mobility, a little bit more options when it comes to approaching things. It also, like, fine-tuned some stuff. It was nice playing as Ellie, not having to craft shivs all the time to stab fucking clickers, because I have that little knife. I liked that it kind of felt like, you know, it's like, hey, we got what worked about the first game. We got what people liked about, like, the crafting and the upgrades and stuff, and we're going to take that and we're going to, like, hone it in a little bit more to make it a little bit better. So instead, like, so when you're crafting items on the fly, it's very similar, but, you know, it's just like, it has a slightly different focus on what you can craft. But I mean, in general, that's very similar. I do like the new upgrading using, like, the pills and stuff, where it's like you have, like, five skill trees essentially that you, like, plug upgrades into in order. I think that I think they're just overall better options than the first game gave. The first game's pill upgrades were kind of like, whatever. It's like, okay, I'm going to upgrade max health. I'm going to upgrade, like, my weapon sway. And then it's like, oh, fucking whatever. Who cares? Don't get Shiv Master. That's a trap. But other than that, it was just kind of like, okay, cool. This one, there's a lot of stuff that they tie in better. You know, obviously, like, extending your listening mode. If you don't use listening mode, that's not a big deal. But there's a lot of upgrades for listening mode. There's a lot of upgrades that, like, make crafting of tools more efficient because you get more of them. That sort of stuff, where, like, you can approach it how you want to play the game. It's totally there to let you do that. I also like the small tweaks to, like, the weapon modification system. It's not a big change. It's just, instead of upgrading just flat stats, where it's like, okay, and now I get 2 more bullets in my gun, and now my gun reloads a little faster. It's more like each weapon has, like, a part that you would upgrade. Like, well, not a part, but, like, a couple different options of parts that you would upgrade that would thus give these sorts of bonuses, like attaching the scope, or, like, adding weight to the stock to help improve stability. Like, it makes sense, and it shows on the guns, like, the physical modifications you're doing. It's not a big thing. It's just a small little, like, tweak. Going prone in gameplay is nice. It's nice to be able to crawl around, use the grass as cover. I like how you can't rely on the grass very much, but it's there in, like, a pinch. I do appreciate that the enemies are definitely smarter. I still wasn't ever that impressed by the AI. I've read a lot of reviews like the AI is brilliant. I'm like, the AI is AI. Like, yeah, they'll try and flank you. Yeah, it feels like they'll try and like logic out where you might have gone if they lose track of you. But at no point was I like, God, I feel like I'm being outwitted by these computers, because it wasn't. I was playing on moderate difficulty, so like middle of the road, medium. Maybe that made a difference, but I don't know. They were fine. They were a challenge, but they weren't like some huge deal. But just, I just think like, you know, if you didn't like the gameplay, The Last of Us Part 1, you're not going to like the gameplay here. It's the same gameplay, just tweaked and refined. I don't think they could have taken that same system and refined it much past this without just like reinventing it, which might have not been a terrible idea, but you know, it's not the choice they made. Here's my problem with the gameplay, and it's not even directly the gameplay's fault. It's that The Last of Us Part 1 is like a 10 to 12 hour long game, whereas The Last of Us Part 2 is like a 25 hour long game. And because of that, the gameplay grates on you because the game is longer. So, like, The Last of Us doesn't have, like, the original The Last of Us doesn't have that much combat. Overall. Like, yeah, you fight a lot of things, but, like, over the course of that, like, a lot of that is dedicated to the story, a lot of that is dedicated to walking around, exploring environments and stuff. And a noticeable chunk is dedicated to actually fighting things. But the game is not long enough that basic gameplay doesn't wear itself thin. Whereas The Last of Us Part 2 has a lot more fighting, and the game is much longer. And so despite the fact that the gameplay is better, I got more frustrated with it because it was just, there wasn't enough depth to it, in my opinion, to really justify like keeping my attention for how long the game was. This game was not short. Those are my general thoughts on the gameplay. It's good. I wish it were better, and you know, the game is too long for its own good. Other things I can touch on before I talk about the story. Oh god. I think I hit most of the important stuff. Let's talk about the thing. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. So ever since the leaks came out, people had issues with the plot of this game. And to be fair, the leaks did leak a huge chunk of the plot. I was unfortunately, I did not successfully dodge those leaks. Even if I had, I wouldn't have in this last week when I posted my video, because I spent a huge chunk of time just deleting spoiler comments because I kind of put this in the review as like my pinned comment over the last couple days, but it's like, if people want to read the leaks, that is on them. That is totally their prerogative. If people get spoiled from this game, I want it to be by choice and not because some asshole put a comment on the internet a day before the game came out, like being like blah 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 was a turkey the whole time. It's like, oh no, I wish I hadn't known that blah 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 was a turkey the whole time. For that scene when he transforms into a turkey would have been hugely surprising. No one transforms into a turkey, I hope you can realize, but still, you know, just saying. I didn't even want to hint towards something that might have been believable, because then people would have freaked the fuck out. But Joel does turn into a turkey. There are parts of the leaks that I totally get why people were upset about. And there are parts of the leaks that I think people were really overblowing things. And then there were parts of the leaks that people were just wrong about. And some of those parts were parts that really negative parts of the fan base latched onto. And I'm not saying that having a negative opinion of this game makes you a negative part of the fan base. You can absolutely have a negative opinion of the story of this game. There are problems with the story of this game. Noticeable ones. There's problems with its pacing. There's problems with A lot of people have problems with the inciting incident itself of the plot, which does not do a story any favors. I think the game has inconsistent theming. I think it doesn't always necessarily know the best way to tell what it's trying to tell. And I think the game thinks it's smarter and more original than it is. Having the opinions about these things is not a bad thing. It does not make you like some hater. It does not make you like, oh, you don't really love The Last of Us, or like, oh, you love The Last of Us too much that you hold it on this pedestal. Those aren't the people I have problems with. The people I have problems with are people that used elements of these leaks as a smokescreen for bigotry. The most ridiculous part of which is because they were wrong. Maybe not the most ridiculous part of it, but the most hindsightly humorous part of it is that, okay, so this is the one thing that I will say directly about the plot of the game, because it is only really an issue because of the leaks, spreading false information, and people have used that as ammunition. I would not call this a spoiler because it never would have fucking come up if not for people latching onto the leaks and it spreading false information, and you might just hear about this. So there is a character in the game that has a very big role that the leaks or somebody reporting on the leaks identified as a trans woman. And this is not true. This character is not trans. This character is just a very muscular, buff lady. And that's just how it goes. Unless there is something buried deep in this game confirming that they are trans, there are things in the game that seem to directly suggest that is not true. And there's nothing in the actual game itself that suggests it, other than this is a very muscular woman who is not like a bombshell with big old boobies and stuff like that, where people are like, that's a woman. But it does seem like somebody in the leaks or somebody was like, and this character is trans, and people are like, yeah, ma'am. And like, it turned into a mess, and people kind of use it as an excuse to be like, no, this game is bad. Also, trans people suck. Or like, stop pushing your trans agenda down our throat. So, that's not a thing. There is a trans character in this game, but it is not this character. So yeah, just that's a thing. Other than that, let's start more directly addressing my opinions of the game after I am sure just pissed off a decent chunk of people that are playing this, that are watching this video. I really liked this game. I don't think it is as good as the first game. Because, like I mentioned, there are issues with its plot. The inciting incident does take some mental gymnastics to perfectly make sense. Some of it seems ridiculous in the moment and kind of gets explained a little bit better as the plot goes on. And then something just comes up, so you're like, yeah, that makes no goddamn sense in hindsight. And just made it go like, yeah, I can't justify that one. I can't explain how that makes sense, other than the game just going like, well, we need for this to happen, so it's going to happen. Again, I don't want to get into details here for spoiler reasons, but let's just say that a group of people are allowed to go somewhere, and it doesn't make any goddamn sense why they would be allowed to do this, considering other things going on. But other than that, a lot of the concerns people have with this inciting incident, I think I can figure out absolute reasons why they make sense. It didn't bother me in the moment, but when people have these questions and have these concerns, like, I don't know if this character would do this in this situation, I would be like, I can definitely see where you're coming from, but I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility, especially considering things that are kind of shown and established later in the game. But I do not think the game puts its best foot forward first. That being said, that does not mean the game does not pull at my heartstrings. I cried twice playing this game. Once about an hour and 45 minutes in, and once at the end. Well, like technically right before the end. And it's difficult because I feel like at certain points the game knows exactly what the fuck it's doing. And there are moments in this game that are great and are very powerful. And there's some moments in this game that are really nice and really like peaceful and relaxing and give me just like big ol' happy heart moments. And it just kind of feels like this is when the game kind of knew what it wanted to be. And I'm not saying because they're positive moments, but I feel like these are like strong character moments that also like work towards the themes and like establish powerful bonds between the characters and show like how change has like occurred and stuff. And then there are moments where it doesn't feel like it knows what the fuck it wants to be. It definitely meanders. And it has a concept that it wants to do. There is a reason that no reviewers are basically allowed to talk about the second half of the game. But, and I get it. I mean, it would be a big how to do. They're trying to keep the second half of the game secret. And I can respect them for that. But I feel like what they tried to do with that, they thought was much more clever than it actually was. And I think they had... it's one of those things where it feels like they had an idea. And they're like, this is a great idea. Let's do it. And then logistically, there are issues with this that maybe doesn't make the game the most exciting thing on Earth. But they're like, but we're so in love with this idea that we're just going to figure out how to make it work. A lot of that has to do with padding. I'm trying to figure out a way to say this without like spoiling anything. A lot of that has to do with them trying to tackle something, but there not being enough narrative beats, I think, to justify the amount of time they want to spend on it. And so there was a lot of just, and now we're in a building. Now we're at the top of a building, and we need to get to the bottom of a building. And there's just going to be a bunch of fighting. And it's just non-stop amounts of infected. And you're like, none of this needs to actually happen. It doesn't really do much for the story. It's just here to pad this chunk of the game. Because otherwise these story beats would just be like boom, 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 boom. And it wouldn't kind of go with their idea of what they want the second half of this game to be. And I just... And the main narrative through line for a good chunk of the second half of the game, I think, is not as compelling as it should be. And it just feels like a distraction for one of the characters to keep them occupied while other things are going on. And that's just a little annoying. That being said, I don't think this is irredeemable. Because there is a lot of character work going on there that I do think is good. Other things I want to touch on. So I've been talking a lot about theme. I don't think it's a surprise to say this game is about revenge and a cycle of revenge, and how that's not a good thing. What an original concept to tell a story about. We've all seen this story before. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, right? I mean, it's literally like a fucking go-to saying. That is what this game is about. I don't think that's... I mean, that's in the marketing. Like, that is clear. Ellie is on a warpath. Or at least that's what the game wants you to really believe. It's not wrong. I feel like a lot of people are concerned that this game is going to be unnecessarily bleak. This is not a happy game. But that is not to say this game does not have moments of levity. It does. And it's actually not as dark as I thought it would be, considering a lot of the reviews I read. The game is violent. It is very violent. The game is dark. Very fucked up things happen. But but it is not like this endless bleak mess. And obviously, the farther you get into the story, the more bleak it gets. With like moments of sunlight happening through, but like at this point our characters are so fucked up that they just keep making more and more terrible choices. These are not terrible choices as in like, oh my god, this is so stupid. It's more like, oh my god, why? I get why you're doing this, but just stop. I never struggled to understand the motivations of the characters. My problems with a lot of the characterization of the game is that I feel like the story does literal gymnastics to try and justify why these characters will do that. Which is better than a character just making a decision because the story needs it to happen, but it's not much better. Here's the difference. We've all seen it happen in a... Oh no, my focus. Come on, come back to me. Hello everyone. My camera hates me. Zoom and lock onto me, you bitch. Fuck. Well, that's not awesome. We're going to manually focus this. There we go. Okay. You can't trust autofocus these days. So, we've all played stories where... Played stories. That too. We've all seen movies, read books, played games, where a character does something that doesn't make sense for them at all. And then you realize very quickly that's because if they didn't do this, the plot wouldn't happen, or like all the problems would resolve themselves because like, oh, this character couldn't... This character threw away their cell phone in anger, even though they're in the middle of the woods, and this would be incredibly important because in the next scene, if they had this cell phone, they would be able to call for help and the whole movie would be over. And we had to explain why they didn't have that cell phone. That sort of shit. You're like, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's really clear you came up with like a really hamstrung reason why they would do this that doesn't make any goddamn sense either for the plot or for the character for why they would do it, just because you needed to, because you couldn't figure out a better solution to this problem as a writer. This game does something, a variant to that I think I've never seen before, where it's like, we know our character needs to make this choice, so I'm just going to dedicate like a 30-minute segment to make sure that happens. And a lot of stories technically do this, but this game I feel like does it really obviously. To where in the moment before a character's making a choice, I'm just like, I feel like this is building to something, but like not in a satisfying way. I feel like this is all just going to be used as excuse fodder later. And it was. I was right every time it happened. I'm like, I don't need to be doing this. I don't know why we're doing this, and I'm sure I'll find out in 30 minutes, annoyingly. My biggest problem with the story, though, at the end of the day, is I don't think it has the focus that it should. The original The Last of Us works because it is about the relationship between Joel and Ellie. And obviously, Joel and Ellie have huge parts to play in this game, but they are not together for huge chunks of it. And there are a lot of other companion characters, some of which I actually really ended up liking. And none of which I hated. Also, that's important to note. Like, these new characters aren't bad. I think because the game is cycling through so many companions, trying to give, like, different... And the companions all have a reason to be there, like, narratively and thematically. They all have, like, a lesson to impart, or they're all, like, a mirror to hold up, or they're all used to, like, justify part of, like, a culture of the area you're at. But I don't think you spend... I think, barring one character who I don't want to talk about, I don't think you spend enough time with these companions to really get super emotionally attached to them. Maybe two of them, but there are definitely some companions who show up and I'm like, okay, you're here. I will not be surprised if you die at some point soon. And like 50% of the time I was right. But I just, like I said, the original game focused so much on the relationship between Joel and Ellie that not having that for a huge chunk of the game is very much to the game's detriment. And for the story they wanted to tell, there was no way to have that happen with them together the whole game. But it's frustrating Because I think for almost all of us who play the original game, it's their core relationship is what drove everything. And it still drives the plot of this game. Like, don't get me wrong. But there's just not enough of them together to really, like, scratch that itch. And they didn't replace it with something just as good. It's that classic thing where it's like, if you're going to give someone something they didn't ask for, make sure it's something that they just didn't know they wanted. And that's not what happens here. You never dive into any of the other supporting characters as much as that Ellie and Joel dynamic, and it hurts the game, in my opinion. Other things I wanted to touch on that I'm totally blanking on, but this video is already like 30 minutes long. It's a little buggy. I didn't suffer any game-breaking bugs, but there were like some weird fucking moments where like I threw a rope and it like looped into the geometry and got stuck, and I had to like do some weird shit to get it out, and like it just like physics kind of got wonky. Characters were staring right at me, they didn't see me. This only like each of these things only happened one time in a 25-hour long game. There's a lot going on. It was not enough to even really break my immersion too much. Like I just slotted right back in. But it was distracting. Oh, I do want to talk about things I liked about the story. Because I said I liked this game and then I just like shat on it. Like I mentioned, there's one companion in particular that I really liked. And there was another one that like I think served their part of the story really, really well. And you totally understood their relationship with like Ellie and all this other stuff going on. And that was really important for the game and for the plot and where it goes. So I thought they did a really good job with them. I think that a lot of people are going to have issues with the ending. I actually really liked it. Because they got what they were going for once they kind of showed their whole hand. And they do keep that hand to their chest all the way until the final cutscene. I also really want to say that, you know, this is like more of a mixed bag sort of thing. I appreciate how dark they were willing to let our characters go. This isn't a surprising thing based on, you know, what we knew about the game, but I do like how they never turned it into like a caricature or a parody. Ellie never just becomes an I'm going to kill everyone and everyone and everyone and like ha 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 I'm happy about this and like let me just murder. That never happens. Ellie is driven for revenge, but it's never played down. The consequences of what she's doing both to the people around her and to herself. And I mean, I don't think it's a huge surprise that that's true, but it does worth mention. It's worth mentioning. There was one more thing I wanted to mention, but I can't remember what it was. Clearly, it wasn't that important then. So yeah, this game has a lot going for it. This game does have problems. I understand a lot of the problems people have with this game. At the end of the day, I don't think it bothered me as much as it would some people, just because I was more open to going along this road, and I have constantly lived my life with the opinion that remakes, sequels, prequels, those cannot diminish from the thing that came before. I will always have the original The Last of Us as its nice little masterpiece that I can play through in a single sitting, as we saw on my channel. But I don't think this game does tarnish the legacy of the first game. I do actually think that they do fit together very well. I understand why they called it Part 2 and not just like The Last of Us 2, because this is very much a continuation of the consequences and the themes of the first game, just presented in like the opposite light. So it does feel like, you know, in some ways it is a mirror of the first game. And in a lot of other ways, it expunges on things that the first game touched on, but never actually took the time to fully develop. But again, there are things in this game that I get where people are just like, fuck this game. I just was able to get by them. Part of that might have been because I knew the leaks, and I kind of knew a little bit of what I was getting into. So I was a bit mentally prepared for some of the things that happened. They happened at times I wasn't expecting them to. Some things happened much earlier than I thought they would, because I only had a cursory knowledge of the leaks. But I do get it. There is a thing that happens in this game, that there will be a group of people who are just like, fuck it, and they'll just turn the game off. And then they'll probably go to Metacritic and give it a 0. But like, beating the whole game, I think it justifies that decision. I just wish it justified it better. If you get what I mean. This is I'd say a great game. But it is not an amazing game. It is not a masterpiece. And it will probably not be my game of the year. That's currently still Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is another game with huge problems. But I just had way more fun playing that. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of you are going to be annoyed. I'm sure a lot of you are just going to be like, why did he rant at a camera for 36 minutes? That's a fair question too. I don't know. I thought this would be like 10 minutes long, but I can't shut the fuck up. That's what I get for not having a script. That's what the review is going to be for. Whatever. You can disregard this, he says at the end of a video, where only people who listen to the whole thing will be able to disregard it, and thus at that point it's too late to disregard. I'm a champion. All right. Thank you guys for watching. For anybody who got this far, I doubt anyone will, but if you did, this is my impression of the game. Shit on it in the comments down below. I've gotten very used to people insulting me on this channel recently. That's fine. This will hurt more, because the other ones were about fake opinions, and these are about real opinions and my actual feelings on things. And I'm sure people are like, you're fat, or there's more comments about how my voice is annoying. I'm looking forward to this so much. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. My actual review for the game will not be up right away. I probably want to beat the game one more time. Fully experience the game again before I actually start working on their review. I do have another quick little review coming out for a game. That'll probably be up over the next couple of days. Look forward to that. I promise you it is about a game that you probably haven't heard of and almost definitely haven't played. And there's a good reason for that. But until then, thank you for watching. I think that's like the 5th time I said that. I just need to shut up. Goodbye.